For the presidency of the United States. There have been many efforts to silence his voice. Fear has abounded in this campaign, and it is fear of what Dennis J. Kucinich has to say to the American people. And this is a man whose voice will not be silenced, Dennis Kucinich.
Thank you very much, Herb Hoffman, for your unstinting dedication to public dialogue and to convening people from all over this country for the purpose of talking about the assault on our Constitution. Thank you, John Kaminsky, for that brilliant recitation of the challenges that face us as we try to restore our Constitution. And to David Swanson for his great efforts of developing a grassroots movement and gathering people from all over the United States to put their name and their hearts on the line and to become activists in their community to support the Constitution. And thank you, John Nickel, for being the Tribune of Freedom, to being the person who, in the tradition of Thomas Paine, has written the tracks upon which a new nation can be built. Please join me in thanking these distinguished. And indeed, we were privileged to have Viggo Mortensen visit with us. He flew in from California on a red-eye when he saw that the American Broadcasting Company, also known as the Disney Corporation, had decided that they were going to limit a presidential debate. All over the country, people are becoming aware of the undue influence of corporations who attempt to essentially capsize our government by assuming power that was never intended to arrogate to them. And we see this as being a consistent theme in our society, the irrigation of power into the hands of the few. It's what John Kaminsky articulated a moment ago. It was interesting, John, to listen to your reflection on the current state of the Constitution and the abuse of executive power, because you laid out very clearly the powers, but also the limitations of Article 2. It's interesting that when you look at the Constitution, the first article that the founders thought to craft, Article 1, related to the legislative power, the power in creating the People's House. Very interesting. They could have said, we're going to make the first statement to establish an executive branch. But they made a conscious effort to talk about dispersing the power. They understood that they would create a government, that it would have a co-equality of power, a very intricate structure that would create checks and balances. But they articulated a role for the legislative branch that included a real detail in Article 1, Section 8 about the ability of the Congress of the United States. And when you start to review Article 1, Section 8, you see that the founders were quite explicit about what they wanted the Congress to have the power to do. Lay and collect taxes, provide for the common defense, general welfare. Those words resonate with the preamble to the Constitution. To borrow money, to regulate commerce, to coin money and regulate the value, to declare war. Establishing the co-equality of Congress was a dedicated commitment to the principle of the Constitution which dispersed the power among three branches of government. Now, I state that as my own preamble to this discussion, because when you look at what John Kucinich said, it is not only an articulation of the violations of power by an executive, but it is also an articulation of the refusal of the legislative branch to do the job which the founders described for it. And this becomes a very serious matter. When you review the Constitution, and I know that John Nichols will get into this later in great detail because I heard him give a brilliant presentation a few months ago on this. When you review the Constitution and you see how many times impeachment is mentioned in the Constitution, it is unquestionable that the founders intended impeachment to be part of the essential system of checks and balances. And when the Speaker of the House of Representatives, who is a friend of mine, who I voted for to make her the Speaker, when she declared on behalf of the People's House that impeachment is off the table, she was taking a step that in and of itself was unconstitutional. Congress cannot determine to amend the Constitution without going to the many states. Congress, and no leader of Congress, can tear the pages out of the Constitution and then tell the American people that they have a democracy. Impeachment and the right to impeach for high crimes and misdemeanors, which really relate, if I'm right, John, to the office that's held. Somebody is in a high office, it's a high crime.
Well, I don't want to interrupt you here, but it is, in fact, they were very specific. They wanted it to be broad. They wanted it to be a high crime that can only be committed by one in the office, but also a misdemeanor. Sort of like, I don't know, if you invaded a country without a declaration of war, that would surely be a high crime. If you shot your hunting partner in the face, that might be a misdemeanor. But the bottom line is... The bottom line is they didn't want those that would come 200 years after to narrow the definition. They wanted us to see it.
Or to basically say, gone. You know, they don't want that to happen either. And so what we're here tonight to establish is the primacy of the Constitution and is the responsibility of the legislative branch to reclaim its authority. Because absent the legislative branch doing that, we have transited into an area that is very dangerous territory, perhaps the most dangerous territory we've been in since the founding of this country, where the legislative branch simply functions as the minions of the executive. When I hear the members of Congress say, we have more important things to do, I ask them what can be more important than asserting the constitutionally constructed role of Congress. It is our duty, not just our right, but it is our duty to move forward with impeachment if we see the laws of our country being violated, or if we see international treaties being violated. We really don't have a choice. It's up to the Senate to determine whether there's guilt or not. But the House really has a duty to impeach if there's a violation. And when our leaders say, we won't do this, this is a disestablishment.